got them tested for atmospheric hazing and recession and all, and it came out that they were large objects quite a long way away and not little models close up. And he seemed a very nice fellow. And then he wrote a rather sad little note saying, but I've written an account of this landing and want to publish it. So my then publisher, Werner Laurie, which was headed by Waveney Girvan, said, well, if you use his photos, you're going to kill his book, so what are we going to do? So we sort of looked at the ceiling and bit our nails, and Waveney said, why don't we have a joint publication, your book and then his as the second part? I said, well, that's a marvelous idea.
George Adamski, a lecturer on Tibetan philosophy in metaphysical circles, had observed and photographed dozens of UFOs at that time. On November the 20th, 1952, together with 5 witnesses, he drove into the Californian desert to watch for UFOs. After they had a sighting together, he separated from the group and saw a dome-shaped craft. A young man in brown overalls with long blonde hair came out of a ravine and approached him. They started communication in sign language. At the same time, his companions observed the encounter through binoculars and confirmed the contact later in notarized affidavits. Lord Desmond decided to investigate the George Adamski case on site.
Well, and I eventually got over to America at a time when you couldn't take any money out of England, 1953, and met this amazing man, and who lived in a little house up on Palomar Mountain with his secretary, Lucy McGuinness, and Alice Wells. They were very hospitable. Making a little money hadn't affected him. And he was an incredible fellow. You know, he would sometimes really annoy you by telling you the most absurd things which you knew weren't true. And at other times he'd come out with such profound wisdom. Are you going to be able to filter this off?
And you talked to him, you asked him?
I have, more or less on gestures and mental telepathy, as it is known talk transfer.
He does not speak. I mean,
he didn't at the time, but I have met him since, and he does speak very well English as well as in the other language.
Did he tell you where he came from?
Yes, this time he told me he was from Venus, although I have met men from other planets as well.
And you had to sort of dig information out of him. Now, perhaps you remember the first contact. He said he took photos, and they all were burned or didn't come out because of the UFO being so near. I asked him if he had the negatives, and he dug them out, and they were black. But I held them up against the sun, and you could see the UFO. It was there, but you know, it needed a lot of light to see it. He hadn't spotted that. He also hadn't spotted that all the proportions of it were in perfect golden section. A lot of little details like that. Now, I asked the 2 ladies, Lucy and Alice. They said yes, they'd seen him talking to the spaceman, and they'd seen this flash as the UFO took off. And they also earlier, as he described, saw the big mothership. And that was chased away by a lot of American planes. You know, it just took off and went off.
4 years later, the U.S. Air Force project, Blue Book, officially confirmed that indeed one of their pilots chased a UFO on November the 20th, 1952 over Desert Center, California, precisely where Adamski met the spaceman.
Then the other thing that worried me was the footprint of the Venusian in the sand, because it was all sort of gravel, that desert. So he directed me so I could find the place. And I read the book, and it said the visitor kept rubbing his foot into the ground. And I did that, and under the gravel was beautiful sand, and I left a perfect imprint of my own feet. So that was true.
Later, Adamski claimed he was contacted by extraterrestrials who are living among us unrecognized. They invited him to fly with them into space. Aboard a huge cigar-shaped mothership, he had the opportunity to take a look into outer space and onto the moon. He wrote a second book about these experiences, Inside the Spaceships.
Then he described to me a thing, mind you, this was 1953-54, how he saw these fireflies in space out of the UFO window, which then, 1969, the first moon trip, you know, Glenn sees these fireflies in space, exactly like Adamski. He told me there were 3 asteroid belts. Well, I believe they found a second one somewhere beyond Neptune. And he said there's another beyond Pluto. We wait and see. And he told me how when he was on the big mothership, they had this amazing, amazing movie. I've never seen anything like it. All the images, there was no screen, and everything happened all around you. Well, that was a hologram. But you know, no one had seen a hologram. They hadn't been invented.
I believe if you read this published material, you will find the descriptions of the firefly effect that was years before John Glenn reported it in 1961. The description that there are more than 9 planets in the solar system, actually 12, and we have acknowledged 11 so far. His description of the darkness of space, quite different from what you would expect to see here from the surface of the planet, also reported by the astronauts. There are numerous accounts of what he has described from space, this atmospheric collection on the moon, and activity on the surface of the moon as far as fog, clouds, water. All these things were reported by George Adamski already in the 50s, way before we had a space program. And I believe that stands for itself. People can always criticize, but I've yet to see any substantial, tangible evidence that anybody's ever come up with.
Indeed, official NASA photographs show clouds and water on the moon, although these are impossible according to science. These photos were presented by the Danish NATO exchange officer, Major Hans C. Petersen, in a lecture in Washington, D.C. in 1995.
Whether I like it or not, I have to say that science is not telling the truth. I have in my possession pictures from the moon which, one, show smoke or vapor or something else racing from a crater. Now, to have smoke racing from a crater, you need an atmosphere. Otherwise, smoke cannot race. So, moon has an atmosphere. Some advanced scientists today agree and say that the moon have an atmosphere 65% or 64% of Earth's atmosphere. Well, then it can also hold water. In one of my pictures from the moon, which I have got from NASA, you see water on the moon in an artificial water reservoir. On the next picture, which is taken by Michael Collins on his second trip around the moon, where he photographed exactly the same area, probably because he also had seen this water reservoir. The water reservoir was gone, meaning that it was camouflaged, so that we could not prove that there was any water on the moon. On another picture from the moon, we see 2 tunnels very clearly, not just a hole in the cliffs, but a nicely square, artificial made hole into. And right in front of this tunnel, in the side, left side of the tunnel, there's a huge, thick pole or obelisk, or what you would call it, which is clearly artificial. And many, many, many other things. We see objects moving and leaving tracks behind. NASA call them stones rolling down the moon's surface, but if you look closer, investigate the picture closer, you can actually see on shadow and light that it is rolling up the moon's surface, and so on and so forth. So we know definitely that science is not telling the truth about our moon. So that the world today is actually living